Hey, HR friends, welcome back. We're in the 5-3 emotional 6.5 day sequence. We're going to talk about day one. Day one is right here in this white rectangle. Now, if this is your first forecast with us, strongly recommend you back out of this video. Right below this video is the 5-3 overview. That will discuss how these graphs are organized as well as how to keep up with us when we're doing these 24-hour forecasts. All right, so let's get going here. So anytime we get into a new emotional set, we're always going to have some polarity that's happening. That's the whole point. It's changing from one emotional polarity to another emotional polarity. So we just had a lot of third person agitation at the end of 5-2, and now we're going to start with some first person agitation into 5-3. And it's always a little bit difficult to imagine. We're at this metaphorical tide change. So it's going to take a little bit of time. The energy is going to reverse, electromagnetics are going to reverse, and it takes our body and our mind some time to get used to that new flow. Okay. So day one is always challenging for that reason. And then we talked about this in the overview, but you can see it. There's going to be a mental polarity flip that's going to follow this into day two and day three. So we're kind of on high alert on how we start this week out, and day one is definitely going to have a few challenging spots here. Electromagnetic wise, when this 5-3 starts, we're going to have a kick up in first person for sure. And you can see that reaches a level 7 here. Now, it's at a 4 most of the time here and above a 4 here for the middle part of the sequence. So just be aware of that. And remember, don't let your defensive design manipulate your choices. It tries to convince you to be unbalanced. You got to make balanced choice and you've got to work through all your stress, through your relationships, all that stuff. That's what we're supposed to be doing. And this pattern right here is deceiving you. It's making you feel like you don't want to, you shouldn't have to. That's just how you feel. And that's part of this design. So we're doing these forecasts so you can understand this next 24 hours is going to feel a little funky and it's going to feel like you're short and it's going to feel like you're going to have to, maybe do some things that you don't really have to do. Think it through. Stay calm, cool, and collective, and try to work through and communicate things in a way that isn't going to make your defensive design activate or the people you're talking about. All right, let's keep moving here. So, day one testing structure. It's going to start out relatively similar in most quadrants. So, the upper left and upper right quadrant, we're starting in that 3 to 4 range. Okay. In the left lower quadrant and the right lower quadrant, we're going to be jumping in between that 4 and even up into that 5-6 range in the lower right here. And we start at a 4 and we kind of drop off. So left's going to start out heavy and right's going to finish out heavy. Now, I always say this before we move down. This is how easy it is. These are the governing frequencies, and our choices are connected to our quadrants. Think of it that way. Every time you make a choice, it affects a part of your body. And if you're having problems getting along with teammates, well, these are the quadrants connected to these teammates. And if you're having trouble balancing your routine, so this is how simple it is. Commit to your team. From this moment forward, make it your goal and determine that you're going to get along with and work out your differences with every member that exists in the team that you have to deal with, whether they're your family or whether they're somebody you met on the other side of the world. That's the goal, to bring this interconnected team of families together. Now, once you can communicate and get along with all the family members, we got to talk to them about, well, what is it we're supposed to be doing together in this interconnected team? And that's making sure that every future team that's born into this world is going to have a fair and balanced experience because of your team contribution. You, as an individual teammate committed to your team, used your time and resources to ensure that every future family that's going to exist in this world, no matter where that is, will have fair and balanced experiences because of your commitment to get along, and your commitment to serve your team. That's how you're in perfect alignment with these frequencies. And if you're in perfect alignment with them, what's going to happen is your aging is going to slow to a crawl. You can empower your body to actually heal and reverse states of disease. And most importantly, you get through this objective. You see, this is a space time simulated reality. And the objective is to balance choice, even though you're designed to be unbalanced. And this is how simple it is to understand how to balance choice. There's only 64 things. You got to balance these 8 perspectives in first person, and you have to balance these 8 perspectives in third person, and they're the same 8 perspectives. They're just different combinations of them, and we're constantly being tested on how well we're doing. Now, specifically in day one in the 5-3, we're going to talk about each of the frequencies and what parts of the body they're testing and what it's connected to. So the 8-4 is a year frequency. This is a mental frequency. That's why it's the color magenta, and it relates to the capital M's on this chart. And all this is doing is it's governing or testing how are your choices as an individual, and this is every individual that exists, how are they going to leave this world in the future? And how are they going to leave the mothers of that future world? How are your choices going to affect those two areas? And if it's going to create something that's balanced, great. But if it's not going to create something that's balanced, then you're going to feel something in your body because if your choices are unbalanced, so will your body. And when your body's unbalanced, that's when it hurts. Okay. So if you're having problem balancing that world perspective to make sure this world's going to be a better place, you're going to feel that in the left lower quadrant. And this is a year frequency. So people that have been having trouble all year, all 2024, and it's been in that left lower quadrant, they can't figure out what's going on, out of balance. That's what's going on. World perspective. Now, if you're having problems with those mature feminine members, making sure their existence is going to be fair and balanced in the future, that they're just as important as every other teammate, male or female, doesn't matter age. Okay. That's what you'd have to do to make sure there's balance for everybody. If you're having problems with that part of the 8-4, this side, that's actually going to affect the right lower quadrant. So if you've been having right lower quadrant pain in 2024, and it's been pretty much the entire year, and you don't know what that's about, now you do. All right. So the next largest frequency is the mental micro frequency. Now it's a micro, that's why it's in a square here. It's not a circle. The macros are in a circle, the micros in a square. This is the only micro we show because it's actually bigger than the emotional macro, 7.5 days. Now, this is going to change out on, I think, day 3 or the end of day 2 and work into day 3. But for now, this is what it's testing. Family view, and the national view. So how are your current routines and choices, are they going to leave future families better off and the future nations better off? And better off means perfectly balanced. That's what you have to invest in. You have to try, okay? Now, if you're out of balance with these, if you're out of balance with the family side of this, you're going to have problems in the right lower quadrant. If you're out of balance with the national side of this, you're going to have problems in the upper left quadrant. That's how that works. Now, you can tell the difference if this is affecting you versus if this 8-4, the 8-4 would have been going on all year. This one would have started about 4.5 days ago. So you're going to notice that when these stop and start, you're going to notice your pain stops and starts with them. That's going to help you determine which one of these you're struggling with the most and which one you're feeling the most. All right, the next strongest frequency is this one. This is the 5-3. Okay, this is an emotional frequency. It's a 6.5 day frequency. It wants to see how your choices are going to affect future individuals and future fathers. Now, it's got to be fair and balanced. If it's not, the more unbalanced it is, the more you feel it. And where you're going to feel it if you're out of balance with that individual perspective is right upper quadrant. So if all of a sudden in the next little bit your right upper quadrant starts to become a problem and it goes on for almost 6.5 days, you know darn well what's causing it. Out of balance here. So what happens if you're unbalanced with this perspective for future fathers? Okay. That's going to affect the upper left quadrant right here. So same thing. If all of a sudden upper left starts to become a problem and hangs in there for 4, 5, 6 days straight, you know it's this emotional frequency that's causing your suffering and pain. And now you know what relationship is out of balance. That's how that works. All right. So these next two are the P frequencies. They're 12 hours each. So we show two of them because the first 12 hours and the second 12 hours. Now, in the first 12 hours, it's going to be testing to see what's our future going to look like because of your choices at the national level and for the immature females that will exist there in the world at that future state. If you're out of balance with this first one, for the first 12 hours, you can expect to feel it from the national perspective. If that's the one out of balance, you're going to feel that in the upper left. If you're out of balance with the immature female perspective, the daughter perspective, you're going to feel that in the lower left quadrant. All right, the P2, last one we got to talk about here. So P2 is checking to see how balanced we are. How's the future world going to look and how are the future sons of that world going to be because of our choices today? If your choices are unbalanced, you're going to feel it in two different places in your body. The one that's connected to the world, you're going to feel that in the right lower quadrant. The one that's connected to the sun, you're going to feel that in the upper right quadrant. That's how that works. So if these kick on and you have problems with either one of these places for about 12 hours and then it goes away, now you know what frequency caused that. That's why we're doing this. All right. So on top of us changing into a new emotional set, we've got a ton of alignments here. And I'm going to try to go through these as quick as possible. Okay. So when you see an alignment on the space side, this has to do with how we get along with teammates. And when you see alignments on the time side, that has to do with how balanced our routines are. So that means all these blue lines right here, that's testing amplified moments to see how balanced are you with your teammates. And these purple lines, these are amplified moments that are saying how balanced are you with your routine. So what we're going to do here is we're going to talk about these blue or space alignments first. And what we're going to focus on here is what colors they are. Okay. So there's only one that's yellow color. Otherwise, we're all lower extremity, the red and the orange colors. See how red and orange is lower extremity here? So this just is, there's going to be a bunch of tests today, and it's going to be testing a lot of the same things. And these red and orange have to do with how we get along with the younger, less mature members of the team. Now, there is going to be a short test that's going to get a little amplified, that's going to go to the upper right quadrant, and this has to do with older members of the team. But here, it's this simple. Older, younger, male or female, got to master it. Got to be able to talk through everything without emotions making us be defensive. And we got to be able to balance our routines and work together. End of story. Any variation that's not that, the more it's not that, the more damage you're going to take. That's how that works. It's just proportional. Okay. You're in balance, you're no worries. You're out of balance. Well, the response is proportional to how bad you're out of balance. Now, when we look at the time side here, this has to do with routines. And these colors, again, more of these bottom colors, these are the smaller routines, individual and family. Now, a lot of us have been over-investing in individual and family routine, which has made us under-invest in the larger national and world routine. That's what the yellow and the green colors are. Now, you got to balance at every level. So if you're over-investing at the individual and family level, it means you're under-investing at these larger levels, which there's penalty for that too. Okay. Again, you can't justify that it's helping you if it's not helping everybody. It's got to be something that helps everybody equally. That's what you should be investing in if you want to be in balance with these frequencies. That's simple to understand in these moments in time. So if your shoulder really starts to take off and you get a trigger point or a knot or a headache that comes on, we want you to open up our live feed and see if we aren't in one of these alignments. Time bar will tell you. Okay. Now, sometimes you'll get that kind of stuff because it's a frequency you're not very good with. Well, these are amplified moments. A lot of people notice this stuff. And when you wonder why certain things hurt and then they go away, well, this is another reason that's happening. And we're just trying to help you put those pieces together. All right. So that's enough about that. So what we've got down here is we've got the whole sequence. In fact, let me bring us to day one here. So this is what we just talked about up there. And you can come down here and you can say, well, what's day two look like? That's what day two looks like. This is what's changed. You'll be able to fast forward and know when this is going to move and what parts of the body it's going to affect. And just watching this, you can see how much variation there is and where we're being tested depending on the day. One day it'll be the right side, the next day it'll be the left side. Sometimes it'll be all on the bottom, sometimes it'll all go to the top. There's a lot of variation that's happening here. And it's important to know that because when you're hurting, you're always worried it's just going to keep getting worse. That's the other thing. It always gets better eventually because it shifts somewhere else. That's how this works, if you were wondering. All right, so we've got the rest of the alignment guides down here too for all 6.5 days. So you can know what days are going to be the heavily tested. Here's day one. We're going to see day two here in just a second. And you can go through all these and know when those amplified moments are coming before they even happen. And then finally, we have the rest of the electromagnetics posted for 2024. You'll know when this pattern is going to elevate months in advance so that you can be prepared. The more individuals that overcome this pattern, the bigger collective effect we can create. Can't wait to see you in day two forecast. Talk to you then.